All right, let's go back to Congress more broadly. They're going to come back from recess next week. Andrew, what is your expectation?
Yeah, they've got a lot on their plate for the year-end last train leaving the station, as they call it. They've got to worry about funding the government. They also have to pass the annual defense authorization bill. That will be less of a heavy lift than government funding. Government funding is always an issue on Capitol Hill. It's always treated sort of as a partisan football. But what they're trying to do right now is kick the can for a few months to potentially late February or sometime in early March as well, to extend existing funding and then give the new Congress and who will be President Donald Trump in the White House, of course, a chance to fund the government. Now, some Republicans think that this is a smart strategy, which, the idea is that it allows them to sort of put their mark on this at the outset of the new administration. The flip side of this is that it puts a very difficult issue on Congress's plate right smack in the middle of the first 100 days of the Trump presidency, when Republicans are already talking up their desire to do some really big things in terms of their agenda with the Republican trifecta come January.
Ryan, not to interrupt you, Andrew, I remember this same game playing out 5 years ago now, and it not going so well to kick the can down the road, and Republicans suddenly having a really hard time passing a budget the first time Donald Trump came into office.
Well, Katie, if it's anything we've learned about members of Congress is that they don't tend to learn lessons from their past mistakes. As a result of it seems like every single time we come up against a funding deadline, they're waiting until the very last minute to get anything done instead of having real substantive negotiations. But you have to imagine that the Trump administration has learned some of the lessons of that first time around and will at least be a bit more prepared to go into these funding fights with, a little bit more of a long-term plan as to what they want to execute. And even more importantly, what their biggest priorities are. To Andrew's point, they want to have a clean slate to start things off because they're going to have some major asks of Congress during at least these first 2 years while they have the trifecta in place, including how they're going to pay for this mass deportation plan, which could run into the hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of dollars. That's not going to be an easy ask, even with control of Congress, of both the House and the Senate. If they attempt to try and squeeze it into a reconciliation package, not to get too far into the weeds, that could be difficult as well. So, they've got a lot of decisions to make and not very much time to make it when they get back here at the start of the year. And that process begins when they come back in December and take advantage of this lame duck period.
I wonder, should we expect what we saw the first time around? How much of the first time around should we expect? Donald Trump kept having infrastructure week. It became a bit of a joke. Andrew, last time, are there expectations that we're going to have these big theme weeks again and Congress is going to, I don't know, what is the expectation for covering this version of a Republican-controlled Washington?
Yeah, I remember it well. I mean, look, you can't take any of that off the table in terms of possibilities, right? But one thing Donald Trump has shown, and honestly those close to him within his inner circle, is that they tend to not understand the realities of Congress, right? You saw many times during the first Trump presidency, Donald Trump and those close to him calling on Senate Republicans to get rid of the filibuster, for example, so that they could pass legislation with a simple majority outside of what Ryan mentioned, which is the budget reconciliation process, whereby they're going to try to extend most, if not all, of the Trump-era tax cuts. Obviously, that doesn't jive with the reality on Capitol Hill, which is that Republicans, at least they say, they do not want to get rid of the filibuster. So, again, oftentimes what Donald Trump pushes Republicans to do on Capitol Hill, they do acquiesce, but sometimes it just stems from the fact that he doesn't understand many of the realities that govern the way things work on Capitol Hill.